Good morning. Can you? Oh, right. My name is Peter McCamley, and I'm here from Ireland. And I'd like to thank Breaking the Surface for inviting me along here to talk to you. I'm very glad that you have decided to stay here and not going out through the door. First time to Croatia, and a few years ago I had a friend, and he come along to me, and he had always wanted to dive the Lusitania. Is there anybody here hasn't heard tell of the Lusitania? Can you put your hands up? So I take it you've all heard of Lusitania. So I'm not going to go into it because anything you want to know about Lusitania, it's already on Wikipedia. I'm just going to tell you about a story about two guys who really, one of them wanted to dive the Lusitania for a long time. And what happened was he became very ill with a life-threatening disease, and he said to me one day, despite all the promises for years and years, Peter, it doesn't look like I'm ever going to get to dive the Lusitania. If I'm talking too fast, please bear with me. I have a lot to go through. So anyway, if you want to dive the Lusitania, you have to get a permit from the state. Once you get a permit from the state, once you get a permit from the state, before you get that, you've got to speak to the owner. The owner is a guy called Greg Bemis. He is not an easy guy to get hold of. He lives in Santa Fe, New Mexico. If he was looking for money, he wasn't going to get any of us because we hadn't got any to start with. But more importantly, this guy was CEO of 3 companies in the Fortune 500 at one time. So if you come along to him and you put your hand up and say, please, sir, can I dive your wreck? Which we did. And I put off a 2-page email telling him all about everything that I wanted to do. Basically, I wanted to find out what the condition of the Lusitania was like. I never dreamt in my wildest ever that I'd ever be talking to people like you at an academic conference like this. All I wanted to do was just dive deep wrecks. This will be a bit about me. And this is where I come from in Ireland. And you can see just how many shipwrecks we have got in Ireland. Over here is where I live. And because it's part of the UK here, there's no mention of the shipwrecks. This is how I got into CCR. This here was for 3 open circuit divers. And the stuff that's in the back of the Jeep was for 9 CCR divers. So you can see why I decided to go into CCR. That's Jerry there on the right-hand side. He's the guy that had the life-threatening illness. And again, I do believe in this here, that we're a product of the people we come into contact with in our lives. We're like the pinball machine. And nobody knows where the flicker's going to push the ball. And through this guy, I'm standing here in front of you today. This here's just some of the stuff that you need if you want to go and dive the Lusitania. And I'll let you just have a wee quick look at it. And basically, it's not an easy thing to do. Getting back to Greg Bemis again, sent him off the email. And within 3 minutes, at about 11:15 one evening, back comes another email. And he turns around to me and he says to me, thanks very much for your email, Peter. Very, very interesting. How far away do you live from a place called Annalong? Now, Annalong is a place in the north of Ireland, about 5 minutes drive from me. And the Lusitania is down in Cork, and he's in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So I'm at the top end, the Lusitania is at the bottom end, and this wee place he has asked me about is about 3 mile or 4 mile away from me. So I wrote back to him and I says, yeah, I live a long distance away from there, Greg. Thanks very much for coming back to me. What can I do for you? Well, for 10 years, he says, the largest artifact on the Lusitania is a ship's davit. And as the guy was one of the fishermen from up around your way, as he was coming over the top of it, he dragged it in his nets. It's the largest part of the Lusitania, bar the propellers, that has been lifted. And unfortunately, it's outside a toilet in Northern Ireland in a park. And he says, we would love to get this down into the Lusitania Museum. So this is the guy here, he says, that's lifted it. We have applied to the council where you live over this last 10 years, totally blanked, refused. We cannot get this thing to move. So I says, I will see what I can do. In the meantime, is there any possibility that I could maybe put a team together to get down onto Lusitania and that we could put some sort of group together. And I'm not too sure what I want to do, but the one thing that I want to do is I want to map the Lusitania. He says, find out about my David, and I'll come back to you about the permission to dive the wreck. And I says, right, that's fair enough, no problem. I'll be in touch. Do that. So anyway, off I goes, and I speaks to my friend Jerry, and I says, Greg Bemis is on board. If we can get this thing moved across the border, and he says, Peter, you haven't got a pup's chance. Not a hope in hell. He says, this is in the north of Ireland. They want to export this into the south of Ireland. He says, our government in the north of Ireland, because of the troubles, have even dissolved the parliament. There's no way in God's earth that these politicians are going to sit down around a table and give you, because this David's going to be used as a battering ram. It's not going to happen. I says, well, if it doesn't happen, we're not getting on the Lusitania. In the meantime, to cut a long story short, we kept lobbying politicians and kept going forward. And in the meantime, I'm thinking all the time, how do I get to map this vital wreck? How do I get this in a 3D format? And I speaks to a friend of mine who knew a guy called Corey Heitman. And Corey's a world foremost in photogrammetry. And then I learned a lot about photogrammetry. And we put forward this proposal with Corey on board. And we told the government that we wanted a good team of people, but the most they would said to us, maximum 6, maybe 8. And we'll give it to you for 7 days. To try and get 7 days in the Lusitania is impossible because of where it's located. So we asked for 14 days and we were given 10. And that was our first day. This is the vessel that we use, and I'm going to come back about the photogrammetry and everything else later. This is the vessel we used, and she's government approved. And this was our first team. And again, Corey, very, very vital in there. So out we goes the first year. Along comes Corey with his 4K imagery. And for those that don't know an awful lot about photogrammetry, like me, basically his camera, and we're now all armed with these Sony A7R Mark III cameras that shoot 4K. And they shoot at 60 frames a second. And Corey has got a phenomenal computer that he loads all this information into. So if you've got bottom time of 40 minutes, and you're shooting at 4K a second, 60 frames a second, and you've got 40 minutes on the bottom, multiply that by 8 divers all armed with these 4K cameras. It's quite a number of frames to put into a computer to try and process all of this information. And this is the area that we're looking at here. This was the area in 2017 that we wanted to focus on. We shot a video on it. Now, this is the first photogrammetry that we come from 2017. And as you can see, ship's boiler starting up at the bow. So if you can look at the bow's like sitting like this here. And as you come back along the bottom, the Lusitania sits at around 92 meters. So it takes you about 6 minutes getting down onto it. And once you're there, there's a video that we have, and it's on, but basically it's just black. Once you go past 50 meters, total blackness. So it's all artificial light. The biggest problem in Lusitania is that she was fished phenomenally for years. And there is nets and fishing line all the time. So on our first year, we had Dave and Corey doing the photogrammetry, another guy doing lights, and basically 2 bodyguards keeping them out of fishing net and fishing line because they're looking down all the time and they can't see what's in forward of them. But the imagery was very, very, what we consider to be very, very good. Again, you can see the engine block, very, very clear. And again, all up around the bow, very, very clear. And then this here, we started getting into the nitty-gritty. So we're on to archives, Harlan and Wolf. And this here, more or less, this is not more or less, this is actually a funnel of the #1 funnel on the Lusitania. And you can actually see the difference? The transposition. And this is photogrammetry at its best, what I believe, as a lay individual. So we passed this all off to the government to see if, because you need to realize that the Lusitania, it will never be a dive site, as we know dive sites, for those that did dive. Because it's Ireland's largest monument. although it be under the water. It is also Ireland's largest maritime disaster. So it's not something that's people are going to run out and say, oh God, that was an amazing dive, without thinking about all the artifacts that you're going to see, the shoes, the boots, and everything that happens when you've got 1,200 people lose their life. So, but what we do want, all along the way, our main goal is to get the artifacts from the Lusitania into the museum. And but we need to get all this information to the government in order that the government and the people can see what the state of the wreck is like and appreciate that there's a time frame that sooner or later, and probably sooner, we're going to lose all this. And I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a Titanic exhibition in Belfast, which has gone explosive. And the thing about the Titanic exhibition in Belfast, there is not one artifact in it. But as we progress the talk here, you'll see what we're at. So anyway, this was our mission accomplished in 2017. Everything went like clockwork. And the government were happy. Greg Bemis didn't really care. He was all he was interested in is, Peter, any word on our David? What's happening? I love the photographs, and I love what you've been at, but any chance of what's happening on the David? And then Corey, he's saying, Peter, we need to get more photogrammetry. And I'm saying, well, we need to get more people involved in this because we haven't got enough time down there. If you're doing 40 minutes in the bottom, you're doing a 4-hour dive. And that's whenever you've got good weather. We need more people. We need more resources. We need more bottom time. More people we've got with cameras down there, the more information we can get. And that was what happened then was, I'll just go back a wee bit. As I was saying, Greg wanted to know what was happening about the David. And I says, well, if you want to know what's happening with the David, the best thing you can do is come over to Ireland and we will start to push this David forward because we're going to need another license for 2018. And we've got to start again from scratch. And the only thing we can do about this, David, is you come along and we'll start to get the media involved in this. So good enough, Greg came over. That's him when he was 73 on the Lusitania. So for an 83-meter dive for a 73-year-old, I hope I can do that when I'm 73. And this is just local stuff that happened in Uri with the dive team. Got loads of publicity, got all the people involved. We thought this was great. But what we didn't realize at that time was that for 50 years, people actually didn't realize what they had outside the toilet. But once we started putting it in the paper, then they realized, oh my God, we've got a big, huge part of the Lusitania out there. So that really awakened the attention. And unfortunately, when Greg came over, just about a month before, he came over to meet Jerry, the guy that lifted the ship's David up onto his fishing vessel. He died. And this is Greg Bemis with his wife. And that's the actual David itself sitting outside the toilet. And nobody, as I said, until we put it in the papers, nobody had a clue what it was. And this here is just about what happened when we started advertising it. But anyway, Greg came over, we got the media involved, started talking to politicians. Then we started doing the lobbying. Then we started talking to both sides of the community. We started talking to the nationalists, we started talking to the unionists, all the politicians behind the scenes to try and get this ship's David moved from north to south. Meanwhile, trying to organize a second license for the next year to get more photogrammetry and something basically that would work alongside photogrammetry. At that stage then I got speaking to a guy called Ger Dooley. And Ger was here yesterday. And he's from Limerick University. And his speciality is robotics and ROVs, autonomous ROVs, which he gave a great lecture yesterday. I listened to it, and it's amazing. at the work that he's doing. And I asked him if he could come along. And last year, and he said, Peter, I can't do nothing in 2018. Not enough notice. But he says, I'll be with you in 2019. I says, happy days. Right. So we get the application back in again. And we get the application back in again and see where we go from there. Back onto the government again. Put in for another application to go back and further the research. They wanted to know. They were very happy from the previous year. So back we went again last year. And then just before we went to go out in August, and in May at a meeting of all the local councils, there was a letter read out from Jerry Doyle, who was the skipper who lifted the Lusitania David on board. And from his deathbed, he didn't write, but he dictated a letter the day before he died, asking the council to forget about their politics and to forget about what had happened in the past, but to think of the communities and to think of any respect they had for him as an individual, if they could see it in their hearts, just to grant the license to move the ship's David across the border. So anyway, we got word back within a day that the council had unofficially agreed to allow the ship's David to go across the border. So basically, this here's the ship's David then. We got it lifted out of the park, and this is it been loaded on a trailer. Who is the guy that owns the lorry is a brother of the curator of the Lusitania Museum down in Kinsale. And it did not take long once we got, that's the 2018 license that we got. This is a restored Napoleonic tower at the old head of museum in Kinsale. That cost €2 million to restore, but it's an idyllic setting for the Lusitania Memorial Garden, and that's where we now have got the Lusitania arm sitting looking out towards where the Lusitania lies, 12 mile off the old head of Kinsale. So that was the 2018 team last year. Greg came over to meet us. And obviously, when the team was down there, there was a lot of politicians and dignitaries that came to thank us for getting this huge artifact down to the museum. Not every day is like that day when you're 12 mile off in the Atlantic down at the old head. But you do get good days, and when you do, you grab them by the throat. We had a 10-day license, and out of the 10 days, we managed 2 days that we could dive. So you count up the hours that you spend and the days that you spend putting in the application for a license. And if it was a business, it's not exactly what you'd call a good investment upon return. However, the most important thing is that you stay focused and you stay determined, and that's where we are. And ironically, along the way, and this is what I love about the Lusitania more so than any other wreck that I've ever dived in my life, the people and the characters that you meet is phenomenal. And when we were down there, we met this guy called Paddy O'Sullivan. I'd read the book by Paddy, and to say that Paddy's a character is an understatement. And in Ireland, we have these storytellers. And if any has ever been to Ireland, and you go into a pub and there's a few Guinness about, and there's a storyteller, you'll not believe it in 5 minutes. And Paddy is the storyteller. And I sat down one evening with Paddy, and the Dave team come with me. And I says to them, Paddy, I'm very interested about John Light, because John Light, he was the guy that, he was a Navy diver. He contacted Greg Bemis, and only found this from Greg, and this is just a wee snippet of information. Not an awful lot of people know this, and you won't find it anywhere in Wikipedia either. He says, Greg, how do you get involved with the Lusitania? And he says, very simply, he says, my solicitor, he says, lived in Boston. And if you ever want to get anybody, I've had this with my young children, have them in the car for a long drive. And that's what happened. This is how I found this information from Greg, because when he came over to Newry, we lifted him from Dublin Airport, just me and him and a friend that got ill and got better, Jerry. And we had him in the car with us for 2 hours. So unless he opened the door, he was with us for 2 hours. And to have Greg Bemis sitting there for 2 hours with you was good. So anyway, I says, how do you get involved in all this? He says, my solicitor lived in Boston, and he says he had a housekeeper. And his housekeeper says to me, said to the solicitor, my son's off coming out of the Navy. He's got new technology. It's called helium. You can use it for doing deep gas diving. But he's looking for sponsorship. He's looking to put a boat together that can go anywhere in any part of the planet to do deep diving, to 200 to 300 meters, saturation diving. It's not out there at the minute. But if you knew somebody that would be into financing and somebody that could provide funding, he says, my son would love to talk to this guy. And he says, my solicitor made the worst phone call of my life to me by ringing me about this venture. Having said that, looking at the whole picture, would have wished that things had been changed. And everybody says it's the most exciting trip I've ever had in my life. But getting back again to Paddy, Paddy said to me, I says, what was John like to work with? You dived with him. And Paddy looked at me and he says, well, Peter, it's like this, he says. Paddy's the sort of guy that could have sold the Pope a double bed. And I thought that was quite a spake and more or less summed up John Light and Paddy. But moving forward, this is in Paddy's house. He took us in, and this is a full-scale replica of the Lusitania. And this commission was for a museum in London, and it took 3 years for the guy to build it. And unfortunately for the guy that built it, when he went to get paid for it, there was no funding due, and the cost at that time was $35,000 because there was 3 years work involved in it, and the guy was basically starving to death because he hadn't received a penny from the museum. So I said to Paddy, how did you get hold of it? He says the curator of the museum knew about me and my interest in the Lusitania. And he says, I bought that for the price of a small car, a brand new small car. And it is full scale. And this is Paddy here. This is a guy called Vic Ferdinand. And Vic, last year was his first year with us on the Lusitania. Vic is from Belgium, and he heads Tech Dive Europe, which is on the 19th of October. If any of you are into technical diving, check out Tech Dive Belgium. Full scale. And it's 6 meters long. Paddy went into this is a model that Paddy made himself, talking all about coal dust and aluminium dust and theories of his own that he had for the explosion that caused the Lusitania to go down in 18 minutes. And anyway, when we're out and we're doing all this 4K stuff, it's amazing what you see. It's also amazing what you miss. And they found the stern bell of the Lusitania. And at 300,000 sterling, Greg Bemis walked away. And it's believed that the stern bell, which is the small bell, that it went to the Greenwich Museum, which is owned by the Naval Academy. However, the main bell has never been found. And again, it's amazing when you've got video with you and you think the conditions are really bad. When you go back and you see the video, you think, oh, they weren't that bad at all. But you can see there, I don't know if any of you have noticed something in that photograph. Something gave us cause for concern and opened, really opened up something for us to look for this year when we went back. We don't know what it looks like, but it could be, maybe, bridge bell. So, government very interested. Greg Bemis very interested. Everybody's really interested. But we needed more people. And we had JER involved with the ROV, and this is where I'm coming to now. And so we had, this year, we decided that we would push the boat really out. And I'm a firm believer, if you ever want something, if you ever want 10 of something, ask for 20. You never know, you might get 5. So we asked for 28 divers to go on the Lusitania. And we were given permission for 28 divers. We were also given permission for 16 days, or as long as we wanted, if we wanted the month. So I'm glad to say that we're working very well with the government. Greg Bemis he's very passionate about what we're doing. He has got other plans of his own. There's a huge plan afoot for 2020-21. It's going to cost an astronomical amount of money. Access the boilers, see was it the boiler that exploded or was it something else that caused the second explosion. And again, this is all coming along to where JER is involved and what you people are interested in ROVs. So this takes us forward to this year where we had 3 projects for the government, all very interesting stuff. And great that these people, like Claire, I know very well. I don't know her as a doctor of ecology. I know her as a great diver, an amazing diver. And JER, who was talking here yesterday, some of the deepest stuff that I've ever done up in Donegal was with JER. And it's just, we're joined at the hip by our passion for deep diving. And that's the team there. That's some of the team. That's week 1. So we had 2 weeks. We had week 1 and we had week 2. So team 1 and team 2. And that was the first week. This is Corey here. And that's Dave Gratian there. And Dave and Corey, they do the photogrammetry. And this is some of the second team from the second week this year. As I said, to get 2 days back to back on the Lusitania is amazing. As I said, if you go down there for a week and you get 2 days, that's what you're going to get. So we planned, if we get 4 days, we'll do very well. We're supposed to start diving on the Sunday, blown out. Monday, blown out. Tuesday, desperate, out we went. And it was bad. Wednesday, dived. So dived Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 6 days, back to back. The amount of information that we got was phenomenal. The ROV we took out on the first day, and there was a health and safety issue with it, with the volume of people who were on board. So it was agreed that we would leave JER to the very end of the week when we were finished, and then he would go out himself with Anthony Weir and another guy from the university, which they did do. And this here is the bow. There's one, you can see this wee bit here. This is one wee bit that the camera's missed, but you can see the detail of the photogrammetry now taking place. Now in 2017 when we went there, first of all we got was this bit. We had only got about half. So with the amount of information that we were able to get this year, we were able to build this. So you can imagine now, if we had another 20 years, we could really put a good bit to this here. And this is where Ger comes in with the ROV. And because we have started something here that this thing here can really go to town on. And in the meantime, we're very confident. When it went out on the very last day, the conditions were good, but Ger got one pass on it, and one good pass it was. But after the one pass, and we were hoping to get another dozen passes, the sonar went down on it. And this is the diver lift that we have for putting the unit in and out on. Now, this is not the Lusitania, unfortunately, but this is the biggest maritime loss in the Second World War. And this is a wreck that has we've been looking to dive for a couple of years, but to get the team and the weather right together, it hasn't happened yet. And this is called the Empress of Britain. This lies at 168 meters off the north coast of Donegal, and you can see what Ger's ROV has done here. You can see the break. So we're looking to get something like this on the Lusitania. Now, we've got to do our report for the government, and there is stuff that we have, a lot of stuff that we've got this year. But it'd be bad if some of you people got hold of it first of all, and the government hadn't got it, because they like to get things first. So that's why I can only show you some of the stuff. But you can see what the ROV that Ger has designed and built is capable of. And that gives you some idea then of what the state of it'll give us some idea what the state of the Lusitania will be like. Now, this takes us to our own agenda then. And this is the artifacts that we have got down on the Lusitania. And as I said, she's decaying after 114 years. She's decaying now at an awful rate, and won't be there for an awful lot longer. And this here and these artifacts are testament of a time to when Britain was great, and a time to when there was nothing made in China, but everything that was made in the UK, and that the UK was the height of engineering in the world. So in the likes of the Titanic, which was made, and the likes of all the ships that came out of Harland and Wolff and Belfast, which is 10 minutes up the road from me, when they pulled in to New York Harbour, they were saying, it was a statement, they were showing off. That's just what it was. We're showing off. We're showing you what we can do. And it would be a sacrilege, I think, if this stuff here was allowed to just get lost. Because we have got all this stuff here. That's the ship's helm. That's the helm, and there you go there. And this is my passion, photographing this stuff. So we spoke to the archaeologist there this year, and spoke to the head archaeologist, and we basically off the record said, what do you need for this not to be lost? And she says, it needs to tell a story. All right, okay. We don't want a museum, whether it be the National Museum or the museum in Cork, we don't want artifacts all over the wall, bits of brass. We want them to tell a story. So we're now putting the story together. And this is where we've taken in another guy, a guy called Stuart Williamson. And Stuart's a rock promoter, but in his spare time, he's an artist. And I've yet to meet anybody that knows the Lusitania as well as what he knows it, and he doesn't dive. And when we would take Stuart with us, and we would come back up onto the ship and onto our support vessel, his first question was, where were you? And we would say, he'd say, what did you see? And we would say, we've seen this, and we've seen that, and we've seen that. And then he would pull out the blueprint, and he would tell you, that's where you were. And these artifacts here, there's like, for instance, that's a valve chest. We're looking to get this here, get these artifacts up. That's Stuart there. And this is typical of the story that we're going to put together now. And so here's the window. And he's pretty sure that it's this window. And then what he has done, each window is numbered. And once we know the number, then we will know which cabin that came off. And Stuart has done a profile on most of the first-class passengers so far. So as we're going along here, we're showing him the photographs and the photogrammetry, and he's transposing that either onto blueprints or information that he has got, and because he's an artist, he's making up these drawings himself. So this is part of our plan, and this is part of our package to give to the archaeological department of the Irish government to be able to tell the story that they're looking about. So next year, we're looking for the license to lift, and that's some of Stuart's handiwork there. And bearing in mind, like, this is what he does for a hobby. So the first time that I met Stuart, he gave me this here, and I said, Stuart, you have a huge problem with that. And he says, what is it? And I says, that hole there is about 3/4 that size. Everything else is perfect. Everything. So that gives you some idea of sort of an artist that he is, that he can draw that. So, and that's me. Any questions?